One Planet, 20 Futures, der Podcast vom Nohaltegkeetsrot Luxembourg.
Hi, das ist Cédric Reichel und das ist die zweite Episode vom Podcast One Planet, 20 Futures vom Nohaltegkeetsrot Luxembourg. Ich begleite euch durch die 20 Episoden von diesem Podcast, wo wir darüber schwätzen, wie Luxembourg wirklich nachhaltig kann gehen, für das Planet für uns alle gut durchgeht, aber was auch konkret Aktionen sind, die wir alle gut können holen, für dazu zu kontribuieren. Und für heute habe ich meinen Invité, der Francesco Sarracino. We will now switch into English.
Thank you.
No problem. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me. And I would like to start with presenting you with three information on you, three facts, but you can also correct me and you can add one if you think something else is very important to know about your work and about you. So first of all, you're a senior researcher at STATEC. You're a member of the World Wellbeing Panel, and you're a co-author of the Luxembourg Index of Wellbeing.
That's correct. All good.
That sounds very interesting. So we will talk about well-being today, about health and how it's linked to the GDP, if it's linked to the GDP. Mm-hmm. I think we will talk about that. Yes. Is there something else you want to add?
I think that's pretty good. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you for your kind invitation, and I look forward to our conversation today.
So, in one of your recent articles, I saw the headline, Why People in Luxembourg Are Not As Happy As They Could Be and What We Can Do About It. That's right. Provocative.
Well, yes, that's actually a request that came from the editorial board of Forum because they were actually surprised by one of the results of our latest report on quality of life in Luxembourg, the Bien-être. And so they asked me to intervene and say something about that. And very briefly, I think that the reason is that the quality of growth matters. The way we implement, achieve economic growth matters. Economic growth can make for healthy society, cohesive societies, or can destroy the bonds that keep people together. When this happens, it's likely that it will destroy quality of life. So what's going on in Luxembourg? Well, we do not really have yet a complete picture, but I could say that there are some tendencies that are rather positive, like trust in institutions, trust in others seems to be still quite high in the country, but other tendencies are rather disappointing. For instance, there is a tendency of inequality to increase, unemployment tend to raise at least in some periods, and these are elements related to growth that can offset the benefits that growth brings to people's lives. So what we need to understand is that economic growth produces some things that make our life better, more comfortable, healthier, funnier if you want, but it also produces some aspects that can make our life miserable, loneliness, unhealthiness, stress. So the balance of these two, plus and minus, is then what determines the impact of growth on well-being. So it's not automatically given that more growth is always better for well-being. It depends.
What is your vision for the future?
How much time do we have?
One sentence.
One sentence. I think that we need to prioritize social and environmental sustainability over economic growth, especially in mature economies. And this means targeting directly what matters for people's well-being. And we now know a lot about what matters for well-being. We know that good social relations matter, health matter, having a job matters, enjoying free time, having good quality public and green spaces matter. So what I'm saying is that thanks to more than 30 years of research on quality of life, we now know a lot about which policies we can enact to directly improve people's well-being. Mm-hmm. So rather than investing resources on promoting economic growth, hoping that it will trickle down on people's well-being, let's not waste the time and target directly what we can do for well-being.
Tro vom Nohaltegkeetsrot. Can you elaborate on the links between well-being and sustainable development? If you had to put a priority, which one should go first?
Well-being and sustainable development are perfectly compatible. There is no trade-off between the two. And if you ask me, what I suggest is that we need to prioritize people's well-being in order to be socially and environmentally sustainable. There are various reasons for this. As I said before, what makes people satisfied with their life is also what can make our society better able to work together to address collective problems. So the environment, for instance, the care for the environment is a collective problem. And we need to enable people to cooperate in order to protect the environment, protect social resources. Think about the pandemic. What we learned during that period. We learned that countries where people were more able to work together, to trust others, to trust institutions, were also those that fared the pandemic better than other countries. That's because there are some problems, like the environmental ones, that cannot be tackled by any one of us. If you are worried about the quality of the air, what can you do? As an individual, you can install a filter to purify your air. But I'm also worried. What do? I install another filter. And also those that are listening to us are installing filters. The sum of all the filters that we are installing ends up worsening the environmental quality. We will probably protect ourselves and our dear ones, but the sum of our actions will worsen the environmental problem. So there are some problems that are collective and they need to be treated collectively. That's why I'm saying we should prioritize well-being. One of the ways to do that is to promote social relations. Promoting social relations is a durable way to improve people's well-being. People with richer social lives are happier, and as advertising experts know, happy people consume less than others. People with more social relations have more opportunities to build trust in others, to build trust in institutions that are all necessary for cooperation. And last but not least, people with richer social lives attach less importance to social comparisons. What are social comparisons? Is the term that economists use for envy, which is a powerful engine of consumption. So investing in social relations shuts down an important engine of consumption. This is a strong way through which promoting social relations will benefit well-being and will promote social and environmental sustainability, thus starting what I call the virtuous cycle of neo-humanism. So, in sum, there is no contradiction between well-being and sustainability. Actually, promoting well-being is the way to sustainability.
Great. And another concept I read was the one about defensive growth.
Right.
Is that also linked to what you just said, or is it again something apart from this?
It's related to this, because defensive growth is a theory that explains why economic growth can happen. Mm-hmm. And basically what it says is industrialization, which is part of the process of growth, at some point generates negative externalities. For instance, pollution. Pollution affects people's quality of life, and they try to protect themselves against this reduction in quality of life. Therefore, they adopt expenditures, what we call defensive expenditures, to defend themselves against the erosion of the quality of the environment. The expenditures, however, are a private solution to a common problem. This private solution protects me, but does not solve the common problem. Not only, but my defensive consumption, this expenditure, contributes to growth because we need to produce the filters, for instance. So the economy continues, pollution continues, and I need to keep defending myself. Next time, I will not only need the filters, I will also need waterproof basements, because climate change will cause a rise in waters or floods. So we need to protect ourselves against floods, and so on and so forth. So this is a vicious cycle, again, in which growth produces negative externalities. Individual attempts to protect against negative externalities fuels growth, in a self-reinforcing loop. Think about the consequences. If we need to protect ourselves against negative externalities with individual solutions by purchasing filters, we need to work harder in order to raise more money. Money becomes more important in our lives because what we can or cannot do depends on how much money we have. If you can install triple glass windows or not, depends on how much money you have. This puts also a lot of pressure on your life, making you miserable, giving you little time to dedicate to the other things you care in life, to your family, to your friends, to your passions. And again, the more lonely you feel, this contributes to economic growth. There is the booming loneliness industry, and so on and so forth. So defensive growth is basically a mechanism that explains why the economy can grow and at the same time not deliver better lives. And why also we can have unsustainable trends, both environmental and social. Environmental, I'm describing because we have direct pollution. Social, because if we have little time to dedicate to others, to our passions, we also do not have time to build trust in others, to cooperate, and to build a network of relations.
Top flop.
This is the perfect moment for the top flop. So what don't you want to hear anymore?
I don't want to hear anymore that economic growth is what we need to improve people's well-being. There is one number that comes to my mind, which is 500.
Okay.
500 years is how much time we need for an increase of 1% in GDP to improve life satisfaction by 1 point. So if you say, well, economic growth is the way to improve people's well-being, very well, how much do we need of it? If we increase it by 1%, it will take 500 years to have a substantial impact on people's well-being.
Where does this number come from?
These are sophisticated studies run by economists, most notably Professor Richard Easterlin from the University of Southern California, and my colleague Kelsey O'Connor, who works at STATEC. The two have analyzed long time series of data from all over the world, both rich and poor countries, and they have put in relation the trends of one variable with the trends of the other variable to establish the association between the two. And what they found is that if there is a statistically significant association between growth and well-being, it is very weak. And if it is not only weak, it also is economically negligible, because saying that it takes 500 years for 1% growth to improve well-being by 1 point, it means that it's economically irrelevant. So it's better that we dedicate to something else our efforts to improve human experience in this lifetime.
So what is an alternative to our current economic model of permanent growth?
It's a model that, rather than prioritizing markets, prioritizes people and their needs. What is that people need? People need time for themselves, for their families, for their friends, for their passions. They need jobs, because jobs give them the means to live, gives them the possibility also to feel recognized as human beings, as part of the society. They need green spaces. They need health. So we can give all these directly, especially in mature and rich economies like the one in which we live.
Fakten, Fakten, Fakten.
Facts, facts, facts. Which number shouldn't we forget anymore after this episode?
Which number should not be forgotten after this episode?
Or which fact?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think how we can steer this conversation further. What I'm thinking is that more than a number, I have a fact.
Okay.
And the fact is that, according to the United Nations, worldwide, we have done zero progress in the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, related to the environment. There are 3 of those, and if you look at the report from the United Nations, All three of them are either stagnating or getting worse.
It is surprising.
It's extremely surprising because we are aware of the environmental emergency now for 40 years. And we have dedicated our best minds to trying to address this problem. And the results are utterly disappointing. Before the SDGs, we had the Millennium Development Goals. Before those, we had the Sustainable Development. We have been doing this all the time. Why are we failing? This is the big question. And I think that the reason why we are failing is that we have not understood what pushes people to unsustainable behaviors, to adopt unsustainable behaviors.
So what pushes people to unsustainable behavior? You say it's something conscious.
I believe it is something institutional in the organization of our society that pushes people to adopt. And specifically is exactly the cycle I was mentioning before. If each one of us has an incentive to find an individual private solution to a common problem, the more we fear about the future, the more we fear about climate change, the more we will try to protect ourselves and our dear ones. Why? Because we cannot trust that as a collectivity, as a society, we manage to solve the problem. But the sum of our individual behaviors ultimately is what causes unsustainability. So we would like to protect the environment as individuals. It's just that as I cannot trust that all of us will do their part in a collective effort, I will turn to my own solution, looking after my own garden. Of course, this is a miserable solution because nobody can save itself. Not even with bunkers. I'm thinking about the famous trend of super rich people to build their own bunkers. Even if they can, close themselves 20 meters underground, what a life is going to be. The only truth is that to have a decent life on this planet, either we have it all together or we won't have it.
That's a very strong message. Because that's not the way we grew up.
I know, because the other thing is that the traditional message is always that we are individuals, we are not a society. Margaret Thatcher used to say there is not such a thing as a society, there is just a collection of individuals. Well, this kind of framework is exactly what has brought us to this point. We have forgotten that there is a collective dimension that is important for well-being, and this is also important for public action.
In the first episode of this podcast, Maggie Koenen mentioned that it's not by chance that the first Sustainable Development Goal is the one erasing poverty. That it's not what people think something about environment, that it's poverty, which should be the first goal.
Absolutely, because poor people are forced to adopt solutions for their own survival that very often end up to be unsustainable. They burn, highly polluting materials just to keep themselves warm and to cook. This is unacceptable, but how can you blame them? They have the right to live. And this is the big problem, that we are forgetting that humans have a right to live, have a right to shelter, have a right to food. This comes before the market.
You mentioned before the PIB bien-être, which was also in the media. Was it enough in the media? Do you think that politics really reacted to it? It's a suggestive question. I'm aware of this.
I will reply to the first part of the question. I think that it's not enough in the media. I think that it's not debated enough. I think that politicians are aware of it and they pay attention to it. But politicians as well are, in a way, victims of this system. Because if all the message, all the rhetoric, all the narrative of this society is oriented around growing economy, having more of everything, obviously that the politician pays attention to that. Because if he does not deliver more, he does not get re-elected. So we really need to change the narrative of what it is, that it means progress. An economic growth an economy that grows because of the negative externalities it produces, is not a synonym of progress. So we need to change that.
But why is the message more community, more society, less solitudes? Why is that not strong enough? Because it's also kind of growth. If I know that I will be less alone, if I know that I will have more shared goods, if I will have access to more goods because I don't have to own them on myself all, it's also kind of growth.
It's kind of growth, but it's a different growth, and it could be a slower growth.
Slower.
It could be a slower growth, if not a zero growth. Because what I'm saying is that, for instance, promoting well-being contributes to productivity, for instance, and productivity is an engine of growth. Most people believe, we should promote well-being because then my employees will be more productive and I will make more profits. And what I'm saying is, no, let's promote well-being because our higher productivity can be used to work less while leaving our output unchanged. And this does not mean reducing quality of life. Many believe that without economic growth we will not be able to satisfy our needs and we will be leading miserable lives. What I'm saying is that were you living a decent life last year? If so, we don't need to grow compared to last year. Because growing means that we need to produce as much as we were producing last year and consume that amount, plus another factor. Let's say a growth rate of 3%, it means that we need to produce and consume what we had last year, plus the additional 3%.
But one of the messages in the last years were that if we don't grow, we lose. That to keep our standard of living, we need to grow. As a country, as a society, our GDP needs to grow, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to offer to the people the same consumption.
Well, but last year we had our medical tests. Last year we ate our fair amount of pasta and pizza. Last year we've been to the cinema. Last year we have bought shoes and a jacket. So why, if that was enough last year, why do we need more this year? One of the reasons why we need more is because of social comparisons and because of adaptation. But all this can change. In a society in which people give more priority to time to others, to social relations, these things matter less for their well-being, and their consumption therefore decreases. This is why I believe that promoting social relations gives us societies in which economic growth matter less for people's well-being. And also the economy will probably not grow as much as before, because many aspects that make it grow, the defensive aspects, the comparative aspects, will be reduced, if not shut down. And then the economy will grow only for creativity and not for defensive purposes.
Der Kritesche Geescht.
I have a more provocative question for you. It's the critical mind.
Yeah.
If the overconsumption of the resources is such a big issue for a country with a footprint of 8 planets like Luxembourg, why waste our time on well-being? Should we not put all our efforts on eco-technologies?
It's a very good question, a very fair point, which goes a little bit along the lines of the now dying Green Deal of the European Union, Unione Europea. There is nothing wrong in prioritizing eco solutions, and they are definitely part of the solution. But relying solely on them is foolish, because there are at least 2 mechanisms. One is the well-known rebound effect. That is, when we manage to get a more efficient car, we don't just consume less, we consume more because we tend to use that car more. The other thing is that, yes, we can use, for instance, solar panels, we can move and electrify everything as many suggest. But we tend to forget that in the end our planet is limited. And we still need material resources in order to produce the solar panel, to produce the batteries. We need extremely valuable minerals. And I know that the counter-argument to what I'm saying is, well, but we can go for full material recycling. And I'm willing to say, yeah, you're right, let's go for full material recycling. But then you need to explain me why, while you're saying this, at the same time, we are currently mining deep sea bed, and we are starting to mine, and we are developing legislation to mine the space. It means that what we have on this planet is not enough, or that the full material recycling is not possible. So, just to wrap it up, yes, eco-technological solutions are part of the equation, but we cannot count solely on them because it will not solve our problems.
So, if we come back to your future vision of the future, what should now be the first step to take? What should be our first step to put that into practice?
I would say that we should invest in giving people the possibility to establish meaningful social relations. Give people time, perhaps reducing the working time. If countries from the global north cannot afford to do that, then who can do that? Create urban environment that are designed to favor good quality relations. Many cities are built according to principles that do not favor the creation of social relations. For instance, you need car to go from place A to place B. You need a car to go grocery shopping. There is, no walkable streets, or the violence or criminality are too high, and people are afraid to go around. So we need to change the way cities are organized to make them safe for pedestrians, for cyclists, because these are this kind of social relations, these are this kind of activities that also favor establishing a social fabric. We can change the way we organize our life in the workplace. In many companies, the big motto is, be competitive, work hard, play harder, and but all this just creates huge conflict, huge stress, and we see this everywhere. This is why another booming market is the well-being on the workplace, and I guess you are very well aware of this trend. I think you work in this field, right?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
At school, we do the same. For many years, we've been teaching children that they should learn this notion because then they are going to become labor force. And they will be evaluated as a single children. And I've progressively come to neglect their ability to be good citizens, their ability to cooperate, to help others. We have just come to say, okay, all that matters is this. And also, we have come to say, your voice does not count. You want to go to the toilet, you ask my permission. You want to learn, you want to learn about whales? No, you need to know about history, and specifically this kind of history. So children have no participation in decision making either. This creates a workforce that is used to receive orders. But this is a workforce that could have worked, perhaps, in the 19th century, in mines, but not in the future, not in the society where we have artificial intelligence that gives us any answer we want. The problem when artificial intelligence will be spread is to understand to what extent it is telling us stupid things, to what extent it is useful, and most importantly, the problem will be to be able to ask artificial intelligence the right questions. Yeah. So that's the critical spirit that we should teach to our children, and their ability to work together with others, because this is what matters. Before becoming workers, they need to become citizens, and they need to be, I hope, at least for my children, that they should be happy citizens.
I don't know if I asked the right questions today, but I know that your answers were very interesting. Thank you very much for this discussion, Francesco Sarracino.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Das war der Podcast One Planet 20 Futures vom Nohaltegkeetsrot Luxembourg. Mein Name ist Cédric Reichel und ich habe heute gesprochen mit Francesco Sarracino. I will summarize in Luxembourgish, if it's fine for you.
Sure.
Wir haben gesprochen über die PIB-Bien-être. Wir haben darüber gesprochen, wie ökonomische Wachstum an Lebensglück studentlich eigentlich nicht mit verbunden sind, wie es 500 Jahre braucht, für 1% beizugewinnen und Satisfaktion am Leben, und dass das definitiv nicht nachhaltig ist, dass als Gesellschaft mehr soll zusammen schaffen, mehr co-kreieren. Wir wissen eigentlich genau, was Leute glücklich macht. Wir schaffen eigentlich dagegen eben noch mit diesem ökonomischen Modell. Und zum Schluss hat Francesco auch noch gesagt, dass es mit der künstlichen Intelligenz wahrscheinlich gar nicht möglich ist, irgendwann so weiterzumachen, weil dann machen wir es wirklich absolut überflüssig. Wir müssen die richtig Fragen stellen und nicht mehr alle Antworten wissen. Thanks so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Das war die zweite Episode vom Podcast One Planet 20 Futures. Merci für das Lauschen, merci für das Gucken. Ihr könnt euch abonnieren auf alle Podcast-Plattformen, ihr könnt uns followen auf den sozialen Medien, habt Lust als Kommentaren an, schwätzt über diesen Podcast mit euren Kollegen, euren Freunden und eurer Familie. Merci für das Lauschen und denkt dran, One Planet 20 Futures, Zukunft also.